You won't believe how my toxic and abusive CEO pitched my system as his own on stage, while I stood backstage holding his coffee. But he didn't know I'd already started building a file that would make him cry right in front of the boardroom in the middle of my farewell party. The fluorescent lights of the Maximum Tech Open Plan office flickered with the same weary inconsistency as my loyalty. For 3 years, I, Ashley Barrick, 31 years old, had been the operational linchpin of this chaotic rocket ship. A term our CEO, Victor Brandt, loved to throw around almost as much as he loved throwing his weight around. Officially, I was an operations assistant. Unofficially, I was the company's central nervous system, the ghost in the machine keeping the servers humming, the investors placated, the schedules untangled, and the coffee machine stocked. My background wasn't in admin. It was in data science, a detail conveniently overlooked because, well, I was quiet, efficient, Latina, and female, easily categorized as support staff, not strategic asset. I was known as the nice one, always ready with a calm smile and a solution, a persona I cultivated as both shield and camouflage. Sharpness, I learned early on, was often perceived as threatening in a woman, especially when directed at men like Victor. Victor Brandt, 44, was the sun around which Maximum Tech orbited, or rather, the black hole that sucked all light and energy into his ego. He was charisma wrapped around a core of pure, unadulterated toxicity. He stole ideas like a magpie stealing shiny objects, gaslit anyone who questioned him, massaged numbers until they screamed mercy, and fostered a culture where sycophancy thrived and genuine talent suffocated unless it came packaged in a loud, backslapping mail form. His current golden boy was Seth, the 27-year-old VP of Product, whose primary qualifications seemed to be boundless arrogance, a knack for echoing Victor's opinions, and an unnerving habit of switching between condescending flirtation and outright belittlement whenever he interacted with me. I managed Victor's life, syncing his calendars, drafting his emails, preparing his presentations. I smoothed things over when his temper flared, reassured anxious board members after his rambling, jargon-filled updates, and generally kept the operational gears grinding despite his erratic leadership. I did it because I believed, initially, in the company's potential. And because, frankly, I needed the job. But the belief had eroded, leaving only necessity and a growing, simmering resentment. The final straw wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a shouting match or a public humiliation. It was subtle, insidious, and utterly predictable. 6 months prior, frustrated by the chaotic way we tracked internal progress, or failed to, I had spent weeks of my own time developing a comprehensive key performance indicator, KPI, tracking system. I used my data science background to build dashboards that visualized everything from departmental efficiency and project timelines to cost-saving metrics. It streamlined reporting, identified bottlenecks, and, for the first time, gave us clear, actionable data. I presented it internally. It was quietly adopted, integrated into our workflow. I received a brief, "Nice work, Ashley" email from my direct manager, who reported to Seth. Then came the keynote. Victor, center stage at a major industry conference, basking in the spotlight. He unveiled his revolutionary new internal tracking system, complete with slides featuring my dashboard designs, slightly tweaked, logos added, and my data points. He spoke passionately about his vision for data-driven management, how he personally architected this system from the ground up. There was no mention of the operations assistant who actually built it. No credit, no acknowledgement, not even a footnote. Just barefaced theft, presented as visionary leadership. Sitting in the back of the auditorium, watching him preen, something inside me didn't just snap. It fractured, cold and clean. The patient smile I usually wore felt like a mask cracking. The years of being overlooked, underestimated, of having my ideas casually absorbed and regurgitated by lesser minds, it coalesced into a single point of crystalline clarity. He hadn't just stolen my work, he had erased my contribution, reinforced the narrative that I was just the helpful girl in the background. That night, fueled by cold fury and lukewarm coffee, I went home, opened my personal laptop, created a new, heavily encrypted folder on a secure cloud drive, and titled it Operation Exit Interview. My exit wouldn't be a quiet fade-out. It would be a reckoning. The next 6 months were an exercise in duality. By day, I was Ashley Barrick, the ever-efficient, ever-pleasant operations assistant. I fetched coffee, managed calendars, coordinated meetings, smiled politely at Seth's smarmy jokes, and absorbed Victor's passive-aggressive comments with practiced serenity. But by night, and during every spare moment, lunch breaks, early mornings, late evenings when the office hummed with the low thrum of servers instead of people, I became an archaeologist of corporate malfeasance, meticulously excavating the layers of bullshit at maximum tech. Operation Exit Interview wasn't about petty revenge. It was about leveraging my skills, observation, data analysis, organizational prowess, to dismantle the facade Victor had so carefully constructed. It was about gathering undeniable proof, building an airtight case. It was chess, and I intended to orchestrate a checkmate he'd never see coming. My tools were varied. My background in data science made me adept at finding patterns, anomalies, digital footprints. The email trail. I started sifting through archived company emails I had legitimate access to as part of my operational duties, scheduling investor calls, coordinating reports. It didn't take long to find threads where Victor explicitly instructed finance teams, CCNG unwitting assistants like me, to optimize certain performance metrics before investor reports were due. Optimize was Victor's speak for falsify. I carefully saved these threads, highlighting the specific instructions and date stamps, cross-referencing them with the official reports sent to the board and investors. Discrepancies emerged, clear as day. The audio files. Victor was careless, arrogant. He held impromptu rants in shared spaces, believing himself untouchable. My smartwatch, a gift from my brother, had a surprisingly decent voice recording function. I started discreetly activating it during meetings where I was present, ostensibly taking notes, or when Victor launched into one of his tirades near my desk. The recordings captured him mocking female employees after performance reviews, too emotional, doesn't have the killer instinct, bragging about underpaying women, good bargain, and instructing Seth to handle a complaint about workplace culture. Make it go away, kid. Each recording was time-stamped, saved, and backed up. The KPI system data. This was personal. I meticulously documented the impact of my system. Using the very dashboards I created, I generated reports showing the concrete results. Operational costs reduced by 32% in the first quarter after implementation. Project completion times improved by 18%. Reporting errors virtually eliminated. I then juxtaposed this with internal HR communications announcing Seth's promotion and bonus, explicitly citing his successful implementation and oversight of the new KPI initiative. The narrative was clear. I did the work. He got the reward. The Whisper Network. I cautiously reached out to former assistants who had left Maximum Tech under strained circumstances. Using encrypted messaging apps, I shared vague sentiments about the challenging environment. It opened a floodgate. Stories poured in, tales of bullying, stolen ideas, NDAs forced upon exit. One former assistant let go abruptly after raising concerns about expense report irregularities, had managed to copy the contents of a hidden folder on the shared drive before her access was revoked. She sent me the zip file. It was a goldmine. Copies of confidential settlement agreements with former employees, non-disclosure agreements with suspiciously vague scopes, and internal memos about managing potential HR risks. Bingo. It was during this phase, digging through vendor contracts and travel reimbursements to corroborate some of the NDA details, that I stumbled upon the first major twist. An anomaly. Victor's travel expenses were exorbitant, even for a CEO. But it wasn't just first-class flights and luxury hotels. There were multiple invoices, recurring monthly payments, to vaguely named consulting firms, global strategic solutions, Apex Business Insights, companies with no online presence, no discernible service rendered. The invoices were approved by Victor, processed routinely. But the vendor contact information, the routing numbers for payment, they seemed off. I cross-referenced the payment details with known vendor databases. Nothing. These companies seemed to exist only on paper, receiving substantial sums from Maximum Tech for consulting services. It smelled like embezzlement, specifically using fake vendor invoices to siphon company funds. The point person for setting up new vendors and processing these types of payments? Tasha Quinn, the quiet, meticulous head of accounting. Tasha, 38, was another overlooked fixture at Maximum Tech. Efficient, reserved, rarely spoke in meetings, but always had the numbers right. She was underestimated, just like me. Had she seen this? Was she involved? Or was she trapped? I needed to find out. Approaching Tasha felt like disarming a bomb. One wrong move and everything could blow up. I couldn't just walk up and accuse the CEO of embezzlement based on spreadsheet anomalies. I needed a pretext, a way to gauge her reaction, her potential complicity or shared frustration. I chose a moment late one evening, finding her diligently working at her desk, surrounded by stacks of financial reports. I brought 2 cups of coffee, the decent kind I brewed myself, not the sludge from the office machine. Long night, Tasha? I asked gently, placing a cup on her desk. She looked up, surprised. Her eyes, usually focused intently on her screen, held a flicker of weariness I recognized. Always, Ashley. End of quarter. Tell me about it, I commiserated, pulling up a nearby chair. Just trying to reconcile some vendor payment records for the operations budget review. Some of these consultancy fees are substantial. Like this, Global Strategic Solutions. I kept my tone casual, inquisitive. Tasha's expression didn't change, but I saw a subtle tightening around her eyes. She took a slow sip of her coffee. Victor values external expertise, she said evenly, her voice low. Right, I nodded, pretending to study the printout I'd brought. It's just, tracking the ROI on these is tricky. Their invoices are pretty bare bones. I let the silence hang for a beat. Makes you wonder what strategic solutions cost 50 grand a month. Tasha looked at me then, a long, appraising look. The air crackled with unspoken tension. I held my breath, waiting for dismissal, denial, anything. Instead, she reached down, unlocked a drawer in her desk, a drawer I now realized was always kept locked, and pulled out not a file, but a single, printed spreadsheet. She slid it across the desk towards me. It wasn't one of Maximum Tech's standard reports. This was something different. Meticulously detailed, it traced payments not just to Global Strategic Solutions and Apex Business Insights, but to half a dozen other shell companies. It cross-referenced dates with Victor's personal travel schedule, highlighted transfers to offshore accounts, noted discrepancies between approved budgets and actual expenditures. It was a roadmap of systematic embezzlement, far more detailed than my initial suspicions. I've been waiting for someone to notice, Tasha said quietly, her voice devoid of inflection, but heavy with meaning. He's been laundering money through ghost contractors for years. Setting up fake vendors, approving his own invoices, burying it in operational overhead. She tapped a column showing escalating amounts. It's gotten bolder lately. I have the proof, the transaction records, everything. But I'm the head of accounting. If I leak this, I'm implicated, or at best, professionally ruined. He'd make sure of it. I needed someone else, someone with unimpeachable access, but perceived lower stakes. Someone smart enough to see it, but underestimated enough to fly under the radar. She looked directly at me. I've been waiting for you, Ashley. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a surge of adrenaline. An ally. A powerful one. Tasha, I breathed, I've been building my own case. Not just this. Falsified investor reports, harassment, stolen IP. A grim smile touched Tasha's lips. Sounds like we have a comprehensive portfolio. We talked for 2 hours that night, sharing findings, comparing notes, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. We weren't just two overlooked women anymore. We were a team, armed with complementary evidence and a shared objective. We knew we needed one more person. Someone tech-savvy, trustworthy, and nimble enough to handle the digital execution without leaving fingerprints. Maya, the intern, immediately came to mind. Maya, 25, was whip-smart, a coding prodigy working at Maximum Tech for college credit and experience. Months earlier, Seth had tried to blame her for a minor coding error he had made in a product demo. I had stepped in, quietly producing the version control logs that clearly showed Seth's commit history, exonerating Maya. She hadn't forgotten. Her loyalty was fierce, her wit sharp, and her disdain for Seth palpable. We brought Maya into the fold the next day, meeting offsite. Her eyes widened as we laid out the evidence, but she didn't hesitate. Victor's a slime ball, and Seth's his mini-me, she declared, cracking her knuckles. What do you need? We need to compile everything into a single, encrypted whistleblower report, I explained. Emails, audio transcripts, Tasha's financial analysis, the KPI data, the NDAs. But critically, we need all digital fingerprints scrubbed. Metadata removed. We need it delivered simultaneously to the board of directors and a specific journalist I've vetted. And, Tasha added, we need perfect timing. Maya grinned. Consider it done. I can set up a dead man's switch delivery. Schedule the report to auto-send from an anonymous, encrypted email address at a precise time. Say, she tapped her chin theatrically, right when your farewell cake gets cut? The plan was solidifying. It was audacious, complex, and incredibly dangerous. But looking at Tasha's quiet resolve and Maya's eager determination, I knew we could pull it off. Operation Exit Interview was no longer just my project. It was ours. Handing in my 2 weeks' notice felt anticlimactic. I walked into Victor's glass-walled office, resignation letter in hand, my expression carefully neutral. He was mid-rant on the phone, waving his free hand dismissively. Yeah, just handle it, he barked into the receiver before slamming it down. He looked up at me, impatience etched on his face. What is it, Ashley? I'm swamped. Victor, I'm resigning, I said calmly, placing the letter on his desk. My last day will be Friday in 2 weeks. He barely glanced at the letter. What? Oh, right. Okay. Well, these things happen. He waved vaguely. Shame. You're good at, keeping things running. He picked up his phone again, already scrolling. Just make sure the exit interview's on the calendar with HR. And coordinate your handover with, whoever. He had already forgotten my name, or perhaps never truly registered it beyond my function. The dismissal, the casual indifference, only hardened my resolve. Perfect. He wouldn't see a thing. My final 2 weeks were a performance piece. I was the departing employee, cheerful, helpful, slightly nostalgic. I brought in homemade alfajors one day, bagels the next. I played upbeat Latin music softly at my desk. I left thoughtful, handwritten thank you notes for colleagues who had shown me kindness over the years, carefully omitting Seth and Victor. I meticulously documented handover procedures, ensuring a smooth transition for my successor, whoever that might be. On the surface, I was tying up loose ends. Beneath it, Tasha, Maya, and I were tightening the noose. We finalized the whistleblower package, a damning compilation of fraud, harassment, intellectual property theft, and embezzlement, meticulously organized and annotated. Maya worked her magic, scrubbing metadata, routing the delivery through layers of encryption, and setting the timer. Tasha prepared final copies of her ghost contractor spreadsheet, ready for physical distribution if needed. I scheduled my exit interview for Friday at 3 p.m., requesting the main conference room under the guise of needing space for a final presentation of my handover notes. Coincidentally, the board of directors had their quarterly check-in visit scheduled for that same afternoon. And yes, HR had enthusiastically suggested a small farewell gathering with cake and champagne in the same room, immediately following the formal interview. The stage was set. Then came something I didn't expect. With 3 days left, Seth cornered me in the copy room. I was making copies of innocuous handover documents, but nearby lay a folder containing printouts Tasha and I had been reviewing, snippets of the embezzlement trail. Seth leaned against the door jamb, blocking my exit, that familiar smarmy grin fixed on his face. "Leaving us, Ashley?" he asked, his eyes flicking towards the folder. "Gonna miss having you around to fetch coffee." "Moving on to new opportunities, Seth," I replied coolly, gathering my papers. His grin tightened. "Funny. You've been acting weird. Extra nice. Sneaking around late. Copying sensitive financial docs." He nodded at the folder. "What's really going on?" "Trying to take a little souvenir with you." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, whatever it is, maybe we can work something out. You help me, I help you." He winked, the gesture utterly repulsive. He thought he had leverage, thought he could intimidate or charm me into revealing something. My heart hammered, but I kept my face impassive. This was an unexpected complication. Had he seen enough? But Maya, brilliant Maya, had anticipated potential snooping. The folder Seth saw wasn't the real deal. Earlier that day, noticing Seth watching me, Maya had swapped my working folder with a D-key she'd prepared. I met Seth's gaze, allowing a flicker of feigned nervousness. "These? They're just budget reconciliation notes for the handover," I stammered slightly. "Victor wanted extra copies." I clutched the decoy folder. "Honestly, Seth, I'm just trying to leave on good terms." He eyed me skeptically for another moment, then shrugged, apparently convinced by my flustered act or perhaps just bored. "Whatever. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." He sauntered off, leaving me leaning against the copier, my breath catching in my throat. Close call. But the decoy had worked. He suspected something, but he had no idea of the scale, nor did he have any actual proof. He'd seen cat memes and outdated tax code PDFs, not evidence of corporate felonies. The final countdown was still on track. Friday, 3 p.m. The main conference room buzzed with forced festivity. Balloons in Maximum Tekka's garish orange and blue bobbed near the ceiling. A ridiculously large sheet cake sat on a trolley, emblazoned with "Thank you, Ashley. We'll miss you," in cheerful frosting. Colleagues mingled awkwardly, sipping cheap champagne from plastic flutes. The board members, having just concluded their meeting nearby, had been invited to join the farewell, Victor's attempt to showcase his happy family corporate culture. They stood near the window, looking slightly bemused. Victor, oblivious, played the magnanimous host. He clinked a glass for attention, beaming. "All right, everyone, let's raise a glass to Ashley. 3 years of, diligent support. We wish her all the best in her future endeavors." He gestured towards me, expecting a demure smile and a few mumbled words of thanks. This was my cue. Operation Exit interview was live. I stepped forward, offering a small, polite smile. Tasha stood near the back, giving me a barely perceptible nod. Maya, supposedly fixing a projector glitch, was poised over her laptop nearby. "Thank you, Victor," I began, my voice steady and clear, carrying easily through the suddenly quiet room. "I appreciate the kind words." "And the cake?" I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the room, the unsuspecting colleagues, the powerful board members, Seth looking bored, and finally, Victor, still beaming. "Before I leave," I continued, my smile turning cool, precise. "I wanted to ensure that everyone, especially the board, understands the full picture of Maximum Tekka's recent successes and challenges. Particularly, I want to make sure Victor gets the recognition he truly deserves. Victor's smile faltered slightly, confusion clouding his eyes. So, I said, reaching into my portfolio bag and pulling out not handover notes, but my personal phone, I put together a little exit report. A comprehensive overview. With a tap on my screen, I executed the final command Maya had set up. A silent signal. Simultaneously, several things happened. An encrypted email, sender identity masked, containing the full whistleblower report, emails, audio transcripts, financial evidence of embezzlement, proof of falsified numbers, the works, landed in the inboxes of every single board member and the pre-selected investigative journalist. Said journalist's Twitter feed lit up. Breaking. Sources allege widespread fraud, embezzlement, and toxic workplace practices at Maximum Tech under CEO Victor Brandt. Evidence includes internal emails, recordings. Developing. Phones around the room began to buzz softly with the notification. Maya, with perfect timing, made the secure Google Drive link containing curated highlights of the evidence publicly accessible, though anonymously hosted and temporary. Victor's face went from confused to ruddy, then rapidly drained of all color. He started to bluster. Now, Ashley, I don't know what kind of stunt this is. The kind backed by data, Victor, I interrupted calmly. Like the data showing my KPI system saving the company 32% in operational costs before Seth received his bonus for implementing it. Or the data Tasha meticulously compiled showing millions funneled through shell corporations like Global Strategic Solutions. Tasha stepped forward then, holding several copies of her damning spreadsheet. The board might find this illuminating, she said, her voice quiet but firm, as she began handing copies directly to the stunned board members. Victor sputtered, looking wildly around, seeking an ally, finding only shocked or suddenly intensely interested faces. He lunged towards me, you little. But before he could finish, the conference room doors swung open. 2 uniformed police officers and 2 plainclothes detectives entered briskly. They moved purposefully towards the front of the room. Victor Brandt, one of the detectives asked, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. Victor froze, his mouth agape. You are under arrest for corporate fraud, wire fraud, and misappropriation of investor funds. The handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. The sound was sharp, final. Chaos erupted. Gasps, whispers, phones held up recording. Victor, struggling futilely, protested his innocence, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. As he was escorted out, shoulders slumped, his rein over, the projector screen behind him, the one Maya was supposedly fixing, flickered to life. It displayed a single, stark slide I had prepared. Theft of intellectual property and resources at Maximum Tech, a case study. And just then, something unfolded beautifully. A distinguished-looking man stepped forward from the group of board members. He had been introduced earlier, briefly, as Ethan Hayes, a consultant joining to advise the board on future strategy. Given the circumstances, Ethan announced calmly into the shocked silence, the board has asked me to step in as interim CEO, effective immediately. My first act will be initiating a full, independent forensic audit. He paused, looking around the room. Then his eyes met mine, and he gave a slow, deliberate clap. No one else knew, but Ethan wasn't just a random consultant. He was a former mentor from my university days, a respected figure in the tech ethics community whom I had reached out to months ago, sharing the potential issues I was seeing, securing him as my silent, high-level backup plan. Someone ready to step into the vacuum if, or when, the time came. Checkmate. My exit interview concluded with Victor Brandt's perp walk. I didn't take another job, I created my own. Within weeks, I launched Barrick Strategic Insights, a consultancy dedicated to helping women, particularly women of color, navigate toxic work environments, protect their intellectual property, and build leverage for their careers. It wasn't just about revenge anymore, It was about systemic change, empowering others who felt overlooked and underestimated. Tasha Quinn, having tendered her resignation the moment Victor was escorted out, joined me as CFO, her meticulous financial acumen now deployed for ethical ends. Maya, declining a hastily offered promotion at the imploding Maximum Tech, became our head of tech and digital security, her skills invaluable. Maximum Tech scrambled to contain the damage. Victor's name and image were wiped from the website almost overnight. The board, under Ethan's interim leadership, issued apologies, promised reforms, and cooperated fully with the ongoing investigation. The company survived, but scarred and humbled. Seth's demise was quieter but equally satisfying. About 3 weeks after the incident, an anonymous email delivered a folder bursting with screenshots of Seth's inappropriate, harassing text messages to several junior female employees, including Maya, directly to the new head of HR, appointed by Ethan. He was fired the same day, escorted out without ceremony or cake. Maya might have had a particularly satisfied smirk that afternoon. Victor Brandt faced multiple federal charges. His assets were frozen, his reputation destroyed. The charismatic visionary was revealed as a common crook and bully. I never needed to be loud or aggressive. My power came from observation, patience, data, and strategic alliances. I wrote an article about my experience, not naming names but detailing the patterns of behavior and the strategies for reclaiming power. It was published on Medium and went viral, resonating with thousands who had faced similar situations. Its closing lines became something of a mantra for our new venture. They taught me the rules of the game. They taught me how to play nice, how to fit in, how to be a team player in a system designed to sideline me. I just learned how to play smarter. And ultimately, how to change the game entirely. The nice one? She finally got the recognition she deserved, not from them, but from herself and the countless others she now aimed to empower. And that was the best outcome of all.